I was never that good. I mean, I skated with a lot of people that were really, really good. That's why I'm not skateboarding for a living, I guess.
Like, what could you do? Name, like,
I had a mini ramp in my backyard. So
really?
Of course I could ollie and kick flips and 360 shove-its and
that's pretty good.
like we used to skate. I used to street skate a lot. Actually, I think skateboarding kind of really influenced the way I think about like urbanism and stuff and like
Really?
built environment. Like you use it in a way that like nobody else does. When you drive down the street, you're like, oh, look at that planter. Oh, look at that curb.
Right.
Oh, that sidewalk has a cool kink in it, you know? You can ollie up that sidewalk and like grind on that planter or something. You know, you start thinking about like that connection from like the sidewalk to the building in a way that like only skateboarders do.
Have you ever got into trouble
Of course.
skateboarding?
I got arrested once, like for trespassing and like skating this bank to wall. We got like arrested and like taken downtown in Huntington Beach. And my mom had to come pick me up and she was so pissed, you know, and I was like, sorry, just trying to have some fun, you know?
I wish I were that good. Yeah, I think that's the aspect of it that I definitely never experienced. I could barely get off the sidewalk.
Right.
I think I was just too afraid. Because I would see these videos of, you know, kids doing whatever tricks, like really basic things, and falling and snapping their wrists. You've probably seen those where it snaps like 90 degrees.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know if this is for me.
Like horrifying.
Yeah. And
like,
yeah, once that's how I can
what
get
the
over it.
fuck?
But to be able to be good enough to where you could cruise through a city and like kind of improvise off of it, that would be pretty amazing. Kind of like parkour, I guess, but with wheels.
Actually, one of my favorite skateboard scenes was filmed here in San Francisco. And it's this guy, Tommy Guerrero, in this like movie that was called Future Primitive. And it came out in like 1987 or 8 or something. I may have that totally wrong. It might be 89, but he's skating down one of the hills.
What?
And just like the whole run is just him skating on this hill. And it's like nuts.
So where did you grow up? Did you grow up by the beach? Because I feel like skating is like a very like beach culture thing, right? It's close to surfing in a way, right? It goes in hand to hand.
Yeah, I grew up in Huntington Beach.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, which is like, they call it like Surf City, but it's also like a mecca of skateboarding as well. Mm-hmm. And everybody, I just hung out with skateboarders all the time and like punkers, basically. I was like, I don't want to be like everybody else here. So like I got into like the alternative thing. Nowadays everybody does it, you know, but back when I was doing it in the 80s, it was like punk and like different, you know.
Did you have long hair?
No.
I
probably had my hair dyed once, but like not very long. Like green or like
seriously
blonde. I do have actually a photo of my hair dyed blonde. It was like a Disneyland passport that I had.
Yeah. That's such a Southern California thing to have a Disneyland passport.
I totally had one. We used to go there all the time. It was awesome, man. Yeah, so weird.
So yeah, I mean, for me, like I grew up like 10 minutes away from Disneyland. So it was an annual visit, like for the family to go during the summer or whatever. And I mean, it's
you
kind
never
of
got
weird.
your hair blonde?
No, I never did. That. I wasn't cool enough to do that.
I don't know if that's cool. But
I did my hair blonde when I came to California.
You have to.
I was like, I mean, where else would I do it? Yeah. You know, I kind of do it here. Exactly. I did it. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Not again.
So Huntington Beach, you're with the skate culture and all that stuff. But your undergraduate degree was not in architecture, right?
Yeah, no. I studied political science and history at UCSD.
That sounds... Was that interesting?
Dude, it was amazing. I loved it, actually. I almost got a double major. I think I was 2 classes away from getting a major in history as well.
Wow.
And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. Like, I'm not going to go into politics because I'm too far out, you know? You know, I was like into Noam Chomsky and stuff. I wasn't going to get it. Nobody was going to vote for me. And so, but I was also like, I want to go to New York. You know, and I didn't even know I wanted to be an architect until after I moved to New York.
Wait, so but why did you decide to major or study political science and history? Was it like a passion in high school? I mean, not a lot of kids are passionate about this.
I was actually undeclared my first couple years in college, and
That's a beautiful thing, actually, to be undeclared.
Yeah, I was just like, I didn't even know. Like, I was like, I have to go to college because that's what I was told I have to do.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, you know, I don't regret like studying history and political science. I actually think it helped me like sort of understand the world in a way that like maybe most people who study architecture don't get. Like, I think there's a benefit to like going and studying liberal arts prior to going to study something like architecture, because you have a broader understanding of things. There was a professor that I had at school as well who his name was Peter Irons, and he was like just so inspiring to me. And he like was one of the lawyers that took the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times.
Ooh. And
so he had like stories about like, yeah, we pulled over and like we realized we were like accidentally pulling over into the CIA headquarters with the Pentagon Papers in our backyard, in the back of our car. He was just amazing. He just like was so out there. And I worked on like a documentary with him once about like this cross that was on the highest point of San Diego and Mount Soledad. And he had me like interviewing like Unitarian preachers and stuff, and just everybody talking about like, you know, the separation of church and state and why this cross that was on public property shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And like he was suing the city of San Diego over it.
Really?
I was like, this guy's so rad.
So, but despite that, you kind of knew or felt like I'm not going to really go into this profession seriously. I mean, to be a politician or to run for office or to, I guess with history, you just teach history. I don't know what else you would do.
Yeah.
Or have a podcast, if podcasts didn't exist back then, but.
Yeah, I remember I like applied for a job with like the National Labor Relations Board, and I was like, oh, I want to do something like that. And then I was like, oh, what about, it would be rad to work with the ACLU. And then I was like, I started researching more, and I was like, oh, yeah, you kind of have to like have a law degree and all this other stuff, and it's super hard to get a job there. Yeah. And then I was like, yeah, I just want to go to New York and like play music and like be in a band and like just whatever, and then I'll figure it out.
And so you played music, I presume?
Yeah, I played in a few bands.
Doing what instrument?
I played in a band in San Diego playing bass. Actually, a couple bands. I played in a couple bands playing bass, and then just guitar and bass, random bands in New York. Nothing that was ever like successful, but it was always fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I just, and then I was working in like design offices, and I was like, I want to get a job in like a creative field. I was like 24 in New York.
This is after you moved to New York?
I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. Yeah, after I moved to New York, and I was like bartending part-time.
So you finished undergrad and you were like, I just want to go to New York because I'm just drawn to the place.
Yeah. I mean, you're like you're in, you know, early 20s. Where else would you want to be?
I mean, you want to skateboard, and New York has a bunch of
that's
sidewalks.
a good question. I mean, I had the same inclination, and I guess everyone's drawn to the city for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you either you try to live in LA, San Francisco, New York, Chicago. You got to live in a big city, or you go to Europe and you live there for a while.
But you never considered going to Los Angeles instead of New York, from Huntington to Los Angeles? No,
because it was like too familiar, you know. And I have like cousins in New York, and I remember I had gone to New York with my roommate's band in San Diego, and they played in like New Jersey in like 1995, and I remember going to Irving Plaza to see this band. They opened up for like the John Spencer Blues Explosion, and I'm sorry, no, it was a Boss Hogg show with like Unwound and this band Clickataticatawi. That didn't actually.
What is that?
There's a band called Clickataticatawi from San Diego that was like an incredible, incredible band, and I like somehow I ended up going out to the East Coast and kind of partially going on their tour with them, like a couple cities, and so I saw them I was with them in New Jersey at the at Maxwell's. And then they were supposed to play the show that they didn't play at Irving Plaza, but we went to that show anyways. And we ended up going to like Max Fish.
What's that?
this bar on Ludlow. That's like a legendary bar, and it's still there. It's now on Orchard Street. But back then it was like maybe 95. It was kind of early. Max Fish, like maybe they opened up in 92 or something. And it's just an institution, you know. There used to be a gallery next door called The Alleged that like started up the whole like Beautiful Losers scene with like Barry McGee and Ed Templeton and all those guys. And there was a huge Thomas Campbell mural in the bar, and it was like a rad like art / skateboarding bar. And I remember just going in there, I'm like, dude, there's nothing like this in Southern California.
Right.
Like I want to go there, you know. Right. It was awesome. And so I did. I moved to the Lower East Side right after I graduated from UCSD.
What year are we talking about?
1997.
Okay.
So
so it was pretty grungy, right?
Yeah. Super grungy.
I mean, Lower East Side, late 90s.
Oh man, I lived. So I went to Europe first because I had to do what everybody does when they graduate college and go like
see the rest of the world.
Yeah, right.
Bit.
So like we went around.
Well, the
Europe
rest of the world. I mean,
Europe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I did it again when I finished grad school, and that's a kind of a better story actually. But I came to New York in like November of 97 with like no money at all, and just like my house was burglarized in San Diego, and everything was stolen from me. But luckily I had renter's insurance, so I had I had money from the renter's insurance and took that, and I was like, okay,
I need to buy a
I've
coat.
got $2,000. I could go to like New York and like pay my rent for a month and find a job. And I found like a 2-bedroom in the Lower East Side on Allen and Delancey. And I lived with a friend of mine, and then like a few more friends moved in, and it was like literally like a studio apartment that they had chopped up to a 2-bedroom, and the bedrooms were so small that you can like extend your arms from wall to wall. And outside of the 2 bedrooms, there was like a kitchen with just a bench. And that was the living room and kitchen. It was like a kitchen with a bench.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend who just slept on the bench, but the bench was like angled.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even a straight, wasn't even a love seat.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a love seat that was kinked.
Yeah.
And then
so he had to sleep slightly bent.
Right. And then there was like a shit shower shaver off the kitchen, which was like a bathroom that like, you know, was basically the size of like, you know, 10 square feet or something. And it was on the 5th floor of a 5-floor walk-up.
Oh God.
And but we were only paying $1,100 a month, so it was like splitting it between like 2 or 3 guys.
That's
it was
amazingly cheap.
Yeah. So we were like right down the street from all these like cool spots to hang out at, you know. And so I lived there for a year, and then like and then I was like, oh, I want a little bit of a bigger place. You know? I think this is fun.
Bathroom that's
this is fun, but it was like coming home every day, and like your roommate, who I love, a friend of mine, like, oh, he's just sitting there, he's drinking a 40 on the bench. I'm like, dude, I gotta fucking work tomorrow. I'm like, let's see if I can get my own place. So I moved to Williamsburg in like 1999. So I moved into that place in like late 97. I stayed there for a year, and I moved to Williamsburg in 99.
Well, before the hipster era.
Yeah, I moved into this like railroad apartment on North 8th and Berry.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I was paying $600 a month.
Blows my mind.
I know.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, and so I stayed there for 10 years, and like when I moved out, it was $800 a month.
What?
Yeah, I should have kept it.
Yeah,
now I'm like, shit, I should have kept that. It would have been a great spot for an office.
Yeah,
it would have been.
And like
I bet it's gone up a lot though.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But actually, the guy who owned the building lived there, and he was like super cool. Like I totally like respected him, and like, you know, like when I moved out, he's like, oh, I'm gonna miss you, man. You were like a good tenant, you know?
Yeah. That's like the only way to find good cheap housing is to find an owner who's not a dick and is not just trying to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't really know what else you do, you know, for like affordable housing. If you're coming new to the city, you don't have a job or whatever. Yeah. And especially if you're like in a creative kind of field.
But Williamsburg back then wasn't like the cool spot, right? I mean,
not at all.
That's the thing too. Like you got to look at the spots that no one's
Polish neighborhood and a Puerto Rican neighborhood with like a sprinkling of hipsters basically. You know, like a few musicians and like hipsters basically, but nothing at all like it is now.
So was the L train that bad back then already, or?
The L train was amazing. Get on it and like get right on the L train. It was never that like it is now. Like it's just nuts now.
Honestly, one of the reasons for me that I was okay with leaving New York City was because of the subway, and like because like it's maybe that sounds like a small reason to, you know, uproot your entire life and go to the other side of the country, but the subway, if you're commuting to work, you know, is probably an hour and a half to 2 hours or 2.5 hours of your life every day, and I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, this is bullshit is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not working anymore, and I think it's declined to a point. It's kind of like at a tipping point, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so unpredictable, and I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. And that's the one regret I have is like I wish we had lived in a place that was like more central Manhattan or central to the office or central to something. Like we were always on the periphery, like right on the edge of gentrification, right at the very beginning of it. We were just talking beforehand about that. And we always felt like when we came in, like we looked like gentrifiers. Right. But I've always had the urge to.
But you're Asian.
Like, well, yeah, but I'm Asian, but I'm young Asian, so it's like they don't know what to do.
That's what...
But I always had the urge to like go announce to everyone that I saw, like, oh no, but I'm not going to gentrify this place because I make very little money because I'm an architect. So I'm not the one that you need to be worried about, you know.
I feel like I've always been a gentrifier. Like I was a gentrifier in the Lower East Side in the late '90s, and then I moved to Williamsburg. I was a gentrifier. And now I'm in Bed-Stuy and I'm a gentrifier.
So what's your next target?
I don't know. Jeez. Where do you go from there?
But the Lower East Side in the 90s, I mean, I don't know what it was like. I mean, I assume there was a lot of people like yourself that were into the arts, into music and stuff, and you know, not, I don't know, like you weren't making a ton of money, right? You were just trying to experience the city and have fun and see things.
Yeah, I was making like nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was crazy. But my rent was cheap, and there was some like cheap bars and restaurants in the neighborhood, and I just made it work.
Yeah. It's
different when you're like, when you have student loan debt and you have kids and you're like a mortgage, and like, I feel like in a way I had more money back then than I do now.
Yeah. Well, did you have student loan debt from undergrad?
No.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But UCSD was like, when I went there, it was like $1,400 this semester.
Really?
Yeah, it was so cheap.
God damn it.
I know.
Wrong generation.
Yeah.
So that you're in Lower East Side for a year, then you end up being in Williamsburg. You stay there for quite some time. At what point did you decide to go to architecture school? So wait, so you were saying that you were working for designers in New York throughout this period, sort of?
I was. I worked in for a retail company in their store design department.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah. And I hated it. I'm not going to tell you who it was because I don't want to like disparage him, but but you know, I have to say that I didn't like it, but like I met people there that I'm still in touch with that I absolutely love, and they influenced me in a way that like made me want to be an architect. And so it's weird, right? It's like weird to say you hate it, but like like it was like something I did that like okay, cool, I like this, but I don't want to do this. Like I didn't want to specifically be doing retail design.
Sure.
Even though I think it's super interesting actually, and I've done it still. Yeah. But I didn't want to just be like pigeonholed into doing one thing, and I was like, I have to go to school and like learn this.
Right.
And so that's why I went to school, and was 2005.
So how long then were you working at just that one place or different places?
Before
school.
A couple different retail places. Barnes and Noble was one of them, actually. I was like working at like like designing Barnes and Noble stores all around the country.
It's so weird.
So weird, but kind of interesting. I travel a lot to do it. One time they sent me down to Tennessee, and I had to go look at every single like community college in the state, And I just drove around to the craziest places. Like, where the
why did you have to visit community colleges?
Because they were putting bookstores in all these schools.
Oh, right.
That is such a weird job,
Yeah, it's
especially
weird.
because now like
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble is like nearly obsolete.
Right.
There's one open in San Luis Obispo still. I don't know how that's even working.
I enjoy going to Barnes and Noble.
I mean, it's kind of cool.
I don't buy anything. I'm just like, there's still books out there, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked them.
I did, yeah. I haven't been to the ones in Tennessee, but it's on my list.
But so you needed to travel there so that we could like get a lay of the land and understand what students were interested in or something?
Yeah, you had to go look at the space where they were going to put the bookstore in and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and like survey it and like come back and like lay it out and stuff. You know? I was like, oh, weird. Okay.
So you found out that Barnes and Noble, designing Barnes and Nobles wasn't your calling at some point, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not.
And so you're like, okay, I'm going to go to grad school for architecture.
Mhm.
Where did you end up going?
City College.
That's right.
In New York?
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
City
Yeah.
College,
I've
Which is
only
at
gone
a-
to public schools all my life.
which is an amazing institution, City College.
Yeah.
UCSD is pretty good too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, City College is an amazing place.
It was awesome because we were the second graduating class of that master's program.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so they were just trying to get like the best visiting professors that they could possibly get.
Yeah.
So I had like one of my professors was Raymond Abraham,
Yep.
who was like an absolute legend.
Yep.
And I totally like befriended him and would like hang out with him and like have coffee with him and stuff. And he was such a freak, like such a dick and a freak. But I just got along with him,
What?
you know? And
Wait, what do you mean he was a dick? Like he was just
he was so like, if he didn't like your project, he would just be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" You know, like, he had like a really crazy reputation.
not even
People
what's
were
wrong with the
scared of him, you know?
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally. But he was such a cool dude, you know, like
That's-
super cool. And if
I mean, hardcore.
If
That's
you-
a hardcore dude.
yeah,
That's a hardcore
if like
guy.
you could get to his level, which I could easily get to his level, like I don't get scared by people very easily. Like so, like I think maybe he sensed that,
Right.
and like I was just also like, I'll just do anything. Like after I finished grad school, I would like go meet up with him and like hang out. He was like one of the only professors. Another professor of mine I really got along with was Philip Smith, Smith and Thompson, which those guys are amazing. Actually, Doug Thompson, his husband, passed away about a month ago. Just such a sweetheart. And they did that building that's on the corner of 23rd and 10th. That's crazy modern building. That's like 2 stories, but there's a gallery on the first floor and it's like Corten steel. And there's like an
23rd.
opening in the side with a tree branch that comes out of this like cutout of the Corten steel.
23rd
Oh,
and
that
10th.
sounds familiar.
It's really
I'm gonna have to
like,
look it up.
you
Look
go
it
there
up
and you're
real
like,
quick.
oh, whoa, what's that? You know?
23rd and 10th. It's trying to remember now.
Yeah.
That's like Chelsea,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. There was nothing there back when they built it. It was like, it's right up against the High Line.
I'm
It
very
sounds
curious by this
familiar. Next to the High Line.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the office again?
Smith and Thompson.
Oh, you have your weird French keyboard on here. Smith.
Oh, is it the French keyboard?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
how
that's
you do
why I was
this.
confused. I was typing.
This is the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Those guys are like
Yeah, I've been there.
awesome.
Yeah.
Like so dedicated to their like modernism. you
Yeah.
know?
So
it's
this
not
was
far from
this
like
was-
what they used to have the gas station with the sheep, right?
Uh-huh.
That
You mean the
installation.
car wash?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that a car wash?
Yeah.
There was a gas station and a car
Oh,
wash.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
really
seeing
cool.
this building and thinking, so this was done a while ago, you're saying, right?
This was
It's
done in the
impressive.
early 90s. I think.
Really?
Because
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
totally not like anything else that you would expect from New York or whatever.
Right.
I'm surprised though. So the master's program at City College was only around for a couple years when you started. They must have had an undergrad program before that,
Oh, for years.
right? Okay.
Forever. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they finally started the master's program, and like I wanted to go to Cooper Union, and
Free.
it was free, but they didn't have a master's program when I they started it afterwards,
Right.
and
Well, it used to be. Well, it was free for like forever, right? And as of I don't know, I lost track of time. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago at this point, there was discussion about it no longer being free because they couldn't afford it or whatever.
It's not free anymore.
It's not free anymore?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think more than that.
Yeah, people were pissed.
Yeah.
I think that was a huge mistake. It's a bummer that
I don't know how, I mean,
they spent all their money on
the building.
Yeah.
The building that the metal panels like distorted when there was like a strong winds and things like that.
It's a Tom Main building.
It's a Tom Main building, yeah.
Which is awesome. It's an awesome building. It looks like a fucking spaceship.
Do you like it?
New York. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, it's fucking weird. And, it doesn't fit in at all in the neighborhood. It's like, it's like, I don't hate stuff like that. It's not what I like to do, but like, I think it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like, it seems unnecessary. Mm-hmm. And mostly, and I hate to bring it down to how much it costs, but it's like an institution for teaching, for education.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily Tom Main's fault. It depends on, the client says we have this much money to spend, then as an architect, okay, well, then we're going to potentially spend that much money.
Yeah, he has no idea. He's like, he doesn't look at their books.
Like so expensive. Like, it's not, and so I don't know. But anyway, yeah, Cooper Union, City College. I mean, I went to City College, right, for urban design. Loved the place. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. So you were there for like 2.5, 3 years?
3 years.
3 years, right?
Yeah.
Did you get a sense of like, I don't know how to describe this, like the personality of the university and maybe even like the political direction of it and the kind of attitude it has and its I don't know, its position in the world. Like when I was there, we were, as a Masters of Urban Design, we were very much doing our own thing. So in many ways, we were very much segregated or separate from the rest of the university and the rest of the schools. But you really got a sense of like the social mission that the entire university has.
I have to say I didn't, but
Really?
It's because I was like in grad school studying architecture. Like I was in a studio class all the time,
Yeah.
Like yeah, I didn't interact with like other students at all, like on campus. Although I did take like some art history classes, and I would interact with them, and that was awesome. I love that. I mean, Michael Sorkin is incredible. He's such a legend, and so like for you, that was like clearly like there's like a vision going on there. When I started in the master's program, Andrew Zaga was running it.
Okay.
And he's like an early Morphosis Tom Main guy.
Mm.
And so he had that thing going on that like he's from Detroit too. And like he was amazing. Like he got so many amazing visiting professors. The year before us had like Billy Zinn and just like an incredible crew of people. Like Kenneth Frampton was teaching there. Yeah, so it was like going to Columbia but not paying the same price.
So
it was like being able to go to Columbia and Cooper Union but not paying the same price as Columbia.
Yeah.
So
I've not talked to anyone who graduated from Columbia who didn't feel like they were a little bit ripped off by the university.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous in a way. I saw Kenneth Frampton once at a and what was it? It was like a lecture. It was at the New School, Parsons New School, down by Union Square, and different faculty members and people visiting from out of state were giving presentations about whatever architectural topic, and it was about 2/3 of the way through. So everyone's seated. The room is dark because they're projecting, right? And this old guy comes in through the back. Couldn't tell who it was because it's dark. Also, a lot of people don't necessarily know what Kenneth Frampton looks like. But he comes in, and as soon as the door opens, the whole thing shuts down. The presenter stops presenting. Everyone like shuts up, and it's like red carpet. They might as well have like pulled out a red carpet from the closet and the way they treated this person, and rightfully so. Oh, Mr. Frampton, come here. People were getting up out of the, like deans were like, take my seat.
Right.
And he was there for all like 15 minutes. And it was like he had just blessed everyone in the room, is how like all the professors were behaving. Thank you, Kenneth Frampton, for coming. Thank you, sir. We're so so grateful that you could be here for the 5 minutes. And he's like, and he was so chill.
Yeah, he seems like a really cool guy.
He's honest. He's like, yeah, no problem.
But it's funny too. It's like in the world of architecture that exists, but nobody knows who the fuck he is outside of the world of architecture. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, like he's a god in like his small sort of thing. And I think that's the funny thing about like the world of architecture is like something like that is like, oh yeah, ooh, Kenneth Frampton, you know? like who?
Yeah,
you mean like Peter Frampton?
99.9% of the world's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah,
What did he wrote some stuff about architecture? He's a critic and a historian. Okay,
well. So I ran into Michael Sorkin at the Ear In once, and I was with like some friends, and I was like, "Oh shit, dude, that's Michael Sorkin. I gotta go say hi to him." And they're like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "Dude, he's a fucking legend, man." They're like, "Yeah, go say hi to him."
Legend.
I took a picture with him.
He's a really nice person.
Totally.
When the first thing I read by him was some kind of short essay, right? And I thought to myself, this is, I don't know, super critical. He's not pulling his punches at all. It's sharp. It's concise. It's easy to understand. It's a lot of fucking fun to read. Mm-hmm. So I got to get more of him. So then I read a bunch of his work, finally met him, and I didn't know what to expect. I thought he was going to be some really old, he is old, but I thought he was going to be a really old, cranky, salty person, just angry. Mm-hmm. And he's like he's totally the opposite. He's kind of like a hippie.
Yeah.
Super happy, really nice. And in the studio, he was always like, yeah, I'll just make it tasty. You know, he's a lot of fun.
Right.
I'm like, you're not anything like I thought you would be. I thought you were going to be a dick. Mm-hmm. But at least to, you know, the people he's friends with, it seems like he's not that way at all.
Right.
Kind of a relief, to be honest.
Right.
So you're in grad school. Did you have any idea what it was going to be like, the architecture school or architecture itself? And were you totally blown away or surprised by that?
I had no idea at all, you know? Like, it's like, I guess I was, how old was I when I started grad school? 33 maybe?
Yeah, so you had been
I was a little older, you know. One of my classmates was like 21 or something. He had just finished undergrad and went straight to grad school. And I was like, this guy's like a kid, man. But he was like just like me, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know anything more than he did, and he was awesome, you know.
But were you?
And there was somebody who was like in their 40s in my class, and
really,
you know, yeah,
that's pretty bold. To do.
Yeah, total like, you know, career change. Like yeah, I'm just gonna go to architecture school.
Were you put off at all by? I don't know how people do that. Would you put off by like? I don't know what the program was like, but I'm going to project and say like how conceptual it was, because I think a lot of people they go into architecture and they study it and they assume, okay, I'm going to learn about doors and windows and bathrooms and you know how to draw a pretty building kind of thing,
right?
And like they get hit with like day one, and it's like totally the opposite, and like what the fuck am I doing? This feels, some people feel like it's a waste of time almost. It's like we're doing this conceptual whatever exploration that's more artistic for sure. Mm-hmm. And they're like, but you know, I want to go work for a firm. I could be learning how to do floor plans and like, you know, how to structure buildings and things like this.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think a lot of it just seemed like bullshit to me, to be honest with you. Like I'd hear like critiques and be like, what the fuck are these people talking about?
It's a great attitude to have.
Yeah. So like I was like, I like the like pedagogy and the theory, but it's like nobody cares outside of the world of architecture how you theorize about architecture.
Yeah.
Like they look at your building and they make a decision whether they think it's beautiful or not, and it has nothing to do with like architectural theory or like, you know, the politics of architecture or anything. So, and maybe that's just my opinion, but yeah, there was like a lot of that going on because Andrew really pushed it, but he also was like super into art as well. And that's where I made the connection, I think, a little bit more personally, is when we were like talking about artists and how like, you know, you sort of take that what an artist is doing and you're influenced by them, and like where do you find inspiration in your design aesthetic? You know, it could be like totally like theoretical, or it could be like, you know, I like, you know, Donald Judd or something, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, and you kind of like, if you're like, you could be like, I'm just into music and stuff, and I think about like architecture in terms of like writing a song or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's true. There's a fair amount of like openness within it, but it's like the only thing that seems to be a commonality across all the different approaches or ways of thinking about it is you got to be able to explain at least like why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I might not agree with your premise. I might not agree with the fact that you're going to strongly reference an artist, or that you're going to, you know, focus on architecture in terms of its pure aesthetics or whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
if I take that as a given, you have to at least explain what's going on with what you're doing.
Yeah. True. In school.
In
right?
school.
Okay. But when you go out into the real world, you're not like designing in a vortex. You're like designing with a client.
Right.
Right. And so I always say, like, for me, like when I'm going into work on a new project, I'm like, I'm not coming with a bunch of baggage. I'm going there and I'm talking to my client. I'm trying to understand what they want and like helping them get to that point.
Right.
And I offer like my advice, and I try to steer the ship in the right direction, knowing what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like it's always a collaboration. And so like if I was going to explain to you the design of a project I'm working on, it would be like from my client's perspective as much as it is from me, really. It's their house, it's their showroom, you know, it's
Right.
their office space, you know, it's their building.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And like, I'm just a chauffeur helping them get home,
right.
you know, and making sure they don't grab the wheel and get us into a car accident.
That's not a bad analogy, actually.
You know,
I mean,
like you could tell me to take a left here and I'll do that. I know how to get you home the fastest way,
right.
but I'll listen to you if you want me to take a left there, but don't grab the wheel and like,
Right.
you know,
It's going to cost you more money, but
yeah,
fine.
If you grab the wheel, you're going to spend way more money. The project's going to take twice as much time.
So then,
And,
was it an adjustment? So I definitely want to get to some of this discussion because you have your own practice, which is interesting. But transitioning from grad school to then working at an office or whatever, was that a brutal transition because of that distance between?
It was super brutal because I graduated in 2008, and it was like,
Oh.
you know, I was like,
Man.
oh, rad! I can't wait. I'm done with school, and I traveled around the world. I was like, I'm going to go on the Trans-Siberian Railroad. So I flew to China, and I did the whole railroad. Went through Mongolia. I went to go see all these Alvar Aalto buildings in Finland, and then got back after like 3 months of traveling.
That sounds
In
amazing.
like
I
middle
wanna
of
do that.
August.
Yeah.
Like the railroad is like $550 or something. It's super cheap from
Really?
like Beijing all the way to Moscow.
But is it a pleasant journey or is it?
It's incredible.
I don't know. I don't know anything about the
David means,
Trans-Siberian.
is it comfortable?
Do you like vodka?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know.
it's super pleasant then. Like I stopped in Mongolia for a couple days and stayed in Ulaanbaatar, and like that was like such a trip. I did it by myself. I was like,
That's, yeah.
I'm just like, this is the last time I'm going to be able to do this in my life. And I think I went all the way around the world with like $3,000, and that covered the
Wow.
plane ticket too.
That's
So I was
amazing.
staying in like
Wow.
hostels,
Sure.
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
But when you take that train,
So I get back to New
Yeah.
York in the middle of August, and the economy tanks. I'm like,
Like shit, should have
yeah,
stayed where I was.
nobody's hiring.
just sit on the train.
Nobody's hiring.
Yeah.
No
Right.
more vodka.
So I was like working at small offices here and there. Like I might have worked like 20 hours a week if I was lucky
Wow.
for like the first year.
Across different offices.
Mm-hmm.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, we had come to New York in 2011, and so it wasn't that bad, but you were for sure still feeling the aftermath. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to interviews at various offices, and it was just depressing. You could you could sense it, you could feel it, you could smell it. Mm-hmm. You know, it was sad is what it was.
Right.
And for a person who was, you know, pretty young at that time, it was very bleak. Right. And for sure the same way for you in 2008, you know, your first experience of the profession, which you're super excited about, to be this kind of atmosphere where, you know, even if they were going to bring you on part-time or full-time or whatever, you knew it was because they just let go like 3 really expensive guys, mm-hmm. and they're trying to bring on, you know, half a dozen people for much cheaper to do the work. And you could tell they didn't want to do it, but they have to. And
right.
Oof, that's nasty.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Like, thank God my apartment was only like $700 a month.
No.
It was like the savior, really. That was like,
yeah.
I'll make it through this, you know? And I had met my wife around that time, and she still reminds me of this. Like, when we first met, like, you kind of didn't have a job. You were kind of broke. So, like, you know, just keep that in mind, buddy. Like, right, I know.
You owe me, all right?
Yeah.
But
like, on our first date, we like walked around Williamsburg, and like, I was like, hey, do you want to go, do you want to just, instead of go to dinner, do you want to just like walk around?
And share an ice cream.
The first date, you just want to walk around.
And then I was like, there's a place called the Turkey's Nest up the street there. Let's just go there and get like a margarita and take it to go. And like, the whole date was like, you know, $20 or something. But it was successful.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You want to walk around.
Yeah.
You don't need food, right?
You don't want to eat at this like fancy French restaurant. Yeah.
You know, that's the one thing I've always wondered, like, friends of ours who are single in New York, it's gotta be so expensive if you're, you know, going on a date once a week or even once every 2 weeks, and if you're paying for the evening, hundreds of dollars, but one night potentially,
right,
on something that might like be worth nothing for a person that you despise. And I couldn't do that.
Right.
So then it's 2008-ish. It's not great, but you grind through, you stay with it.
Yeah,
pretty much all the way through, and then it just
I finally got it like a job, like a full-time job, and it was with Kravitz Design. And I was
Kravitz Design,
yeah,
as in Lenny
Kravitz, and I was like, oh, it's like I don't know, Lenny Kravitz has got like a design firm. Oh,
so he has a design
I'll go check it out, you know, go to the interview, and you know, I'm not like a huge fan of his music. I actually like some of his songs. But
did you lead with that in the interview?
No.
I actually like some of their songs.
Like, no, like, I wasn't a fan of, like, I came from like the punk scene, you know?
Right.
But I'm like not a music snob at all. Like, I'll totally like bust out a Lenny Kravitz song. I don't care. And I like got the job, and I was like, sweet, I got a job. And it was such an awesome job.
What do they do? So what do they do? How big are they?
So it was back then. It was just like, and I think they've just always kind of been small. But like, it was like Lenny had worked on a house in Miami with this firm in Portland, Oregon called Skylab Architecture. It was like they do incredible work.
Really?
And you should look at their work. It's like, I love it. It's like John Lautner style.
Okay.
And so he did a house in Miami and basically took a few people from that office after doing that house and started Kravitz Design. He's like, I want to start an architecture firm, you know? You know, but this was like back in the like mid 90s, like way before Kanye or like Brad Pitt or anybody else who's like, any of those other celebrities who think they could be architects. So I'll give the credit to Lenny for being like the first dude to do that.
Right.
And like he started getting jobs because he did this like bar in Miami that everybody loved called like I think it was called like the Florida Room or something. And then his house was like featured in a lot of magazines. Mm-hmm. And I got hired because they got this big condo development project where they were doing all the interior design for it. So I worked on that. I worked on like the SLS hotel in Miami. I worked on like his house in Brazil. his house in the Bahamas. I worked on like this hotel called Bisha in Toronto, and then like the SLS hotel in Las Vegas. So it was a lot of like interior and
but high budget interior stuff.
Yeah,
there's things to do.
Yeah, and it was just like, and I still love these people that I worked with there. Like I think they're incredible designers. Like, I know it sounds like, oh my God, like Kravitz design's got to be bullshit, you know? Right. But actually, I think they like totally influence the way I think about design. Like they're out there, you know, and it's all about making something like totally like funky. It was like about like how do I take his personality, like that rock star personality, and like make a space feel like that. Mm-hmm. And so it was fun, and they did great projects, and like the people there were like really good designers, like real designers. You know, they weren't like, you know, Lenny's a rock star. He's not a designer, you know, but he's got taste and stuff, and he like travels around the world, and he's got an aesthetic, and he like totally has like an opinion about stuff.
Were the other designers at the office, were they trained like formally in
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Architecture?
They're like real.
Okay.
They're like
okay.
They're like real designers. They came from like a really good architecture firm, and so I did that for like 3 years, and then I worked at Grade for like 9 months.
Yeah,
and then I worked with Morris Adjmi,
right,
and that was like a mind blowing job as well, and like he's like incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Morris, well, first I want to ask you, so Lenny Kravitz would obviously, you know, have a big significant say in the different designs and works that you guys were doing. What was that? I
think he was like he was really like, here's the concept.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want you guys to do. And then like he just let the designers take it from there, kind of. And then he would come in and like be like, all right, cool, I like that, you know. I like that. That's cool, man. He was a super nice guy.
Really?
Although I rarely saw him because he was always either in Paris or like on tour or something.
Performing, yeah.
He like has a house like everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like in his music and video clips, he doesn't wear a shirt very often. Was he wearing a shirt in the office or?
No. It's like Iggy Pop, just goes to the airport without a shirt on.
Yeah, why not?
No,
just necklaces and you know.
He would come in and he was like, dude, that fucking guy, dude, Jesus Christ. Look, he just looked like a rock star, and you're just like, I'm like, I look at myself and I'm like, dude, I need to fucking step it up here, Jesus Christ.
Get your ear pierced, you know, shut up in one day.
Well, you couldn't, I mean, if you do that, the transformation has to be subtle, right? You can't like show up day one dressed normally, and then day two like be mimicking Lenny Kravitz, and there would be like really obvious thing.
Right.
But I'm curious, so like the kind of discussions or feedback or concepts that he came up with, was it like mostly aesthetic kind of directions that he was trying to describe to you guys, and then or what? Yeah,
totally. Like, yeah, he wasn't like, you know, he wasn't like talking about like architectural theory at all or anything like that. You know? Like, I think if you like listen to like him talk about like, you know, also like it was more like interior design related, you know, a lot of the work, although I did houses in like Brazil and in the Bahamas as well. Yeah, it was about the vibe of the space.
Vibe.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
And it's and it was refreshing. It was like, I'm here I am, like I'm done with grad school. I like got a master's in architecture, and I'm working with Kravitz design. Like nothing theoretical about it at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was about like how you sense and how you feel the space. And like, so it was purely about his ego or whatever, you know, not a bad way. It was like, this is my personality,
right?
You know, this is how I like the space to look.
And how does that?
And that's how he sold it. It's like people are like, oh, we want to get him to do it because he's going to make it look like his house,
right?
You know,
right?
Which is kind of weird. You know what I mean? It was a totally weird job. So like up to this point, I had completely weird jobs.
Well, you know weird, I mean? But I feel like it was matching you pretty well, right? Because you like music, skateboarding, and kind of on the verge of
imagine me going into like
straightforward, but not really.
Morphosis to try to interview for a job. They'd be like, we're not going to fucking hire that guy. You know?
What?
Yeah.
Why not? You look so clean cut and normalized now. No one would ever know.
Yeah, right. I know. So this is like.
He has Lenny's face tattooed on.
I have tattoos all the way down my arms and stuff.
And you're shirtless most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Listeners should have actually asked you.
I never go to the airport with my shirt on.
Yeah. We're doing a podcast. You put a shirt on, please. It's a little aggressive. No, I think that's actually really interesting. And I've always wondered, I feel like when your client or your boss or the people you collaborate with are not architects and they're artists, that they would obviously have a different perspective, right? But that they would be potentially more free and loose and therefore more fun. And it's more about feelings and emotions and vibe and words like this, which I think maybe for a lot of hardcore architects, let's call them, like they don't like that kind of talk because it's not debatable. I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing. Maybe it's not debatable. It's not something.
Well, it's not what you learn architecture
it's
based
not what you're trained in, right?
Yeah, maybe it might just be that.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe why I never get invited to do crits at schools. Like I'm totally fine with that,
Yeah. Well, next time I'm running a studio, you can come do.
I would love to.
If we're in the same
Actually,
state.
I should say I did. I was invited to City College a few times to do crits.
Crits are fun.
I think it was too early. I didn't have my perspective quite yet, And I feel like after working with Morris, I kind of came up with what I think my perspective is.
Really?
Yeah.
So what was the difference kind of between before and after that you felt?
Like you Kravitz to Ajmi.
Mm-hmm,
Morris came from Aldo Rossi's office. Like he was Aldo's partner. And so that's how he started out his office when Aldo passed away. They were working on the Scholastic building and he finished it off and then just built his office from that basically. And he's just if you look at his work a little bit more, because everything he does is organized but super creative and subtle. He's always influenced by artists, and it's always not trying to be stand out, fitting in, but still being interesting. And so I think he's walking a fine line, and it's super difficult to do that. Actually, it's easy to drop a spaceship down onto a site, right? Like Rim Koolhaas or Tom Main does. It's harder to design something that's actually really interesting, that kind of feels like it fits in. And I kind of liked that about his work. And so when I had an opportunity to work there, I was like, oh God, I want to work with him. And then I just really love the guy. I totally, I think he's such a great human being. He's got a great taste in music. I go see punk shows with Morris. I still hang out with him every once in a while. He's such a nice guy, and he's got a great personality. It was the best job I've ever had.
Did you feel like because you went to architecture school later in your life, when you first started, you were probably much older than the people who finished school at the same level, right? Do you feel like your age difference kind of helped you in a way in your career?
Yeah, for sure.
Damn it.
I had but I don't think it helped me maybe get to the point a little bit faster, but I'm 46, you know what I mean? There's people who have more successful firms than mine who are 36, and so maybe it helped me get to where I am now a little bit faster, but I'm not oh, I'm so happy I'm 46 and I'm got my own business, you know what I mean?
Or even
I kind of wish I was 36 and you know what I mean? It's what am I trying to say?
Or even just with the partners, right? It seems like you've had a good relationship with your bosses.
That probably
right?
helps.
And I feel when you're a kid who starts working in those firms,
who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, he's hungover again. You understand responsibility more when you're older, and you're not when I was working for these retail companies, I was just all over the place, you know, and my heart wasn't there. I was like, I got to pay my rent, man. So I got to go to this shitty job.
Right.
And, you know, I think some of my friends, when I finally like stopped and I was like, fuck this, I'm going to go to grad school. They're like, dude, that's rad.
Really?
Like they were like, you know, like one of my best friends always tells me, he's like, I was always like really inspired by the fact that you just like, you weren't ever stoked on your jobs and you just stopped and was like, fuck this, I'm going to go to grad school. And like I was making a decent living. I was getting paid like $80,000 a year back then.
Whoa.
You know, and I didn't get to that point for 10 years later after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to even just get back to that, you know?
Let's see, I want to ask you something. We were talking about Kravitz, working for him. Then you were saying worse anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think actually your point about architecture and architects who are able or try and are able to create something that is on that fine line like you're talking about is a really good point.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with it. And I think it's something for me that I'm interested in for the reasons you said, and even from the perspective of like looking for an employer back when I was doing that, I always found offices who did work kind of like that much more appealing to go toward, because one, I agree, it's like really difficult to do, and there's nuance involved, right? And that's, I think it's not, sometimes that work doesn't get as much credit as it deserves because people just don't take the time to actually look at it a little bit longer than 2 seconds.
Right.
But I also felt like, and these were my assumptions, like if I go work for an office that does those kinds of buildings, you can tell there's subtlety and thought in it. So there's going to be something I'm going to learn about it, right? Like there's going to be a process. There's going to be discussions about why this line is right there and the reveal is this wide or this narrow and why it's shifted one way or another. Whereas my feeling was, okay, if I go and apply and work at one of these big high concept offices, I don't like Tom Maiden, for example, easy pick. I'm sure I would learn a lot, but it's so much about the big idea that I don't know if I'm going to learn about the subtlety of forms and shifting and lines and things like this, and the choreography of the architecture, the physical stuff. I think I'm going to learn more about big idea, and I'm going to be kind of probably run to the ground and paid very, very cheaply. And so for me, it was like, I'd rather learn the former, because that's like skills I can apply to anything I design in the future, right? Even if it's not the same aesthetic, like there's some kind of logic happening there, versus the big idea offices, either I agree with what they're thinking, like the concepts, or I don't. Either way, I already have my own specific ideas in mind. Like I don't really give a fuck with what they're saying, you know? Right. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I thought about it. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of work put into those types of buildings that people don't really realize. Right. It's kind of a bummer that people don't think about it more. Right.
So for me, it was like, there was like two ends of a spectrum. Like Kravitz was like, you know, they're like designing some funky shit, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, it was rad, you know, but it was at the same time, it was like a thing. And like what I wanted to do was something more minimal and like more modern, you know, like mid-century kind of like, but that contemporary at the same time. And so mixing those things together for me was like what I was like interested in. And then also all my experience was like interiors basically. So I worked in the interiors department at Morris Adjemi's office, but I was the only architect in that department.
Really?
So he put me on projects where like it was like a building, interior of a building renovation or something, you know, and which was really cool because I was able to like run projects like as if I was almost my own studio in a way within the interior studio. When you're in a big office, no matter what you're doing, you're doing something that you're told to do, right? Like even if you love your boss and you love the office, you're still doing what you're told to do. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. I was like, at a certain age, I was like, I want to do my own thing. And so then I just went off on my own.
So how did you transition? You just like...
Well, actually, let me ask you before. So I want to know, when did you know that you were going to go off and do your own thing? Was it something that you kind of felt from very early on, and maybe you were, it was kind of subconscious, but you felt it? Or was it, you know, just like right before you started, you realized, like, it hit me, oh, like, I got to do my own thing?
Dude, before I even went to grad school, like, I just wanted to do, like, the idea of like being an architect wasn't working for somebody else. It was like, oh, cool, you can like make buildings and like design spaces and stuff. And like, I just, in my mind, it was like an artistic thing, and like, like a thing that you do, like, you're the driver, you're the chauffeur, you know?
Right.
And your client is in the car with you. And like, it works that way when you're working with a firm as well. But I just wanted to be like a business owner as well, you know?
It's different.
I think there was like, I love that Fugazi song, Merchandise.
What? I don't know that song.
It's like, he's got this part of the song. It's like, you want to know what I do? Because you say I need a job. I got my own business. You want to know what I do? None of your fucking business. And I was just like, yeah, that's right. You know? I want to have my own business, you know?
There's a certain amount of freedom. So you decided to transition away into Marina's question was, like, how did you make that transition then?
Yeah.
You know, was it like a lot of people we find work full time, moonlight, evenings, weekends for sometimes years.
Yeah.
And then slowly transition.
Yeah, that's what I did basically. You know, like I had like a couple jobs lined up, you know, and then like one job came in, I was like, I don't know if I could do this and continue working. And then like, it was a total risk. I was just, I had Sarge, who was like 3 years old. My wife was out of work. And then we had another baby on the way. I was like, oh, what better time to go off my own? Super stupid. Like, but like, if you don't take risks, you don't get rewards. Right. And like, yeah, like it wasn't stupid because I had a couple of projects I had lined up, and I was like, I know it doesn't seem like the smartest time to do this, but like, when is the right time to do it? It's when you have enough projects to go off on your own. That's when you do it. Right.
And then it worked out.
It's as simple as that.
And the project worked out.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing your own thing?
3 years.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah. So we'll see. I can't imagine ever going back to work for somebody again. I don't think I would.
Yeah.
Like I would probably like, you know, bartend or something if I had to like supplement something, but like I haven't had to, you know, I would just do something else. I can't imagine going back to work for somebody again. Not that I disliked my jobs. And like I said, like my job with Morris was one of the best jobs I ever had. I loved working with Kravitz Design. But I just can't imagine going back to that where I don't get to do everything and call the shots and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't even care about that. Like I've been like, oh, I should just get a partner because it's so much better to partner with people on things, you know? Right. And like, so I'm not like it's not all about me at all. It's just like, I like just having my own thing.
I mean, there's so much freedom that comes with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I recently visited a couple different offices, architecture offices, you know, very well established. They do good work and yada, 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 successful, and they're, you know, small, medium sized, and they seem nice, like nice people. Mm-hmm. So like all the boxes are checked 100%. Right. And I was just visiting these offices and not looking to work there. But as soon as I stepped in the door, I just had like a bad taste in my mouth. I'm like, nah, just can't.
But you got to get your IDP hours done.
I couldn't do this.
I'll do it.
You know, it's funny you said like I would probably just go bartender, figure something else out or whatever. And I mean, if I get to that point, then I will see what I would do. But I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's just I don't know. There's some kind of weird routine and like complacency that happens when you work for someone else like that. And I think you get hypnotized and you don't quite realize all the stuff that you're not in control of, or the stuff that you're doing that you don't have to do, and vice versa when you work, full time for someone else.
Right.
And that's not a critique of the place at all. It's just, I think, the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I don't think like going off on your own is for everybody, actually.
No.
I think it's for very few people. And I say that because I think it's important to be able to like, you have to like enjoy talking to people. There's a lot of architects who don't. And so they're better off like letting other people do it for them and letting their boss do it, and sitting down and designing it in the office, and they're good at it, Some people, if you like to chat with people, then and you enjoy that part of it, then you should consider going off on your own. I think it's like literally as simple as that. Like it's that the difference between working for an office and going on your own is like literally like when you go on your own, your client is your boss, and if you don't enjoy talking to people, you're not going to have any clients. Like my favorite part of the job is just chatting with my clients, right? Yeah. And getting to know what they want and stuff, and like the collaboration with them.
Yeah, or you partner with someone who likes to talk to clients, and then you don't have to.
That's true. Yeah, that's the other way to do it.
Yeah, that would be good.
Exactly.
That would be good.
So I want to ask you more about this, but I drank too much beer, so now I need to pee.
Oh,
so
God.
I want to take a quick break.
Yeah. Are you going to pause it?
No, we're just going to chop it and reassemble it.
You guys keep talking.
Or not. We can keep having conversation without him. That's okay.
David is fucking weird, man. That guy.
I know. Tell me about it. I see him every day. He's going to listen to that. Or he's going to edit. So is the office just you, or do you have people who work with you?
Yeah, it is just me right now, and I've had like a couple of people come and go.
So but how is it to be the boss?
It's like I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like I have like an office. Yeah. Really, I have an office, but like it's just me. In a way, I kind of like that because it's like old school. Yeah. Like people are always like, "How many projects are you doing? You don't have any people working for her? You're fucking crazy, man." And I'm like, kind of, but I like the idea that like I'm like going back to like how it was done like 100 years ago, Yeah. Like, and not having like a huge crew. Although I would love to get to that point. I'm just not quite there yet.
But so when you started, I mean, you've had the experience like leading projects and things like that, but there was probably many things about owning a business that you didn't know how to do.
Yeah, nothing.
So how did that work out?
Yeah, that's the thing is like they should teach you how to do that in architecture school. It was just learning, like I had to learn like QuickBooks. You know what I mean? Like
QuickBooks.
Yeah, like stuff like that. Like how am I going to track my time? I still don't even really do that well. Like how am I going to invoice people? Yeah. I was joking with one of my clients. I'm like, God, I think I should probably figure out how to invoice through QuickBooks. He's like, yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Because I like kept fucking up my invoices too. I'm like, but he's like such a great guy. He doesn't care. He's like, I'm not hiring you to be a good invoicer. I'm hiring you to be a good architect. I didn't say that, but I'm assuming that's what the case was.
I feel like the people that you naturally draw toward you, and this would extend to your clients potentially, are just kind of like cool, nice people that you could have coffee with.
Right. Yeah. Totally. I mean, I don't know, because I imagine that I've just not gotten jobs because people are like, that guy's weird or whatever. And it just wasn't. I didn't relate. They didn't relate with me.
Right.
And that's fine. But yeah, a lot of my projects come through people I know or people who I've worked with in the past or something. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely have like a vibe around you. And actually, it's funny because the first time that we met was at an office, and immediately I was like, this guy must be from California, which turns out you were. But like you're very much a California guy, it feels like, in New York.
I still have a California driver's license.
Yeah.
With a New York address.
What? You can do that?
Yeah. Let me show you.
How is that even allowed? That doesn't make sense.
I just renewed my license when I moved to New York. And I've always had a California license with a Brooklyn address.
How old is this photo?
It's we
won't show it on there, but
7 years ago. I know. Look at how tan I was. I know. Like, I looked at that today. I'm like,
dude, you look.
What was it? I was living in New York for like 10 years when that photo was taken. I have no idea.
You look Puerto Rican.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Is that your brother?
Yeah, I know.
From another mother?
I do look like.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't look like a white Jewish dude at all.
You don't look like
in
a
that photo.
gentrifier.
That's a great photo.
That's weird.
But yeah, it's funny. I mean, like New York leaves an impression on everyone who lives there for a period of time. But you still feel very Californian to me.
Can you do a New York accent?
No.
California accent?
Californians don't have an accent.
People say
I don't know. I'm asking. I'm not from here. I mean, I don't even know the difference.
I think when I hang with my friends, I probably sound more Californian because we throw dude out way more often, and like that probably makes me sound more Californian. But yeah, other than that, I don't know what makes you sound like a Californian.
I think
it's slang.
That's the slang.
It's the slang.
But there's no accent involved with California. I mean, there's
actually,
like the Valley Girl. But
I think there is.
Really?
But you never know what your accent sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Well,
do you know what your accent sounds like? Yeah.
Well, except if I listen to those recordings.
You've just been told that you have an accent.
I don't have an accent.
I know you don't. I know exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you.
Like, but New Yorkers have a very specific accent, the South has an accent. California, well, at the very least, much more neutral sounding, I would say, for sure.
I would say women in California have a very different way to speak than like women in New York.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there a New York accent, though? There was something 100%. About this in the...
There is I don't know, maybe a New York
There's
Jewish
like a Long
accent,
Island
a
accent?
New York Italian, maybe a Long Island accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I miss.
Do you?
Yeah.
No one.
There is something comfortable, like cozy, like diner-ish about it, that
like working class.
Kind of like yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, I kind of miss that.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I like when I like encounter people with like heavy accents like that. Like you go up to Boston and you encounter some contractor who's just like, that guy's the real deal.
Yeah, he's authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like so many, and it's partly, I think, probably the professions that we're in. But in New York, everyone's international and from different places because it's a big melting pot. That I kind of wish I got to know a little more, more like local New Yorkers who were from New York City. The only ones I ever met were like police officers. It felt like.
Yeah, you gotta go to Sheepshead Bay.
Okay. Yeah.
There's actually a good Saturday Night Live skit about that, like Sheepshead Bay, like accents, and it was hilarious. Like they nailed it so good.
So you're in New York, you got your own office, things are going well. You're out in Bushwick. Are you guys staying in New York though?
I don't know. Yeah. I love California. Like my ideal like future is to have like an office in New York and in California. I don't ever want to leave New York. I love that city so much.
Yeah.
But I love California too. I love LA and San Diego. I would probably choose one of those cities just because I have so many friends there. I grew up there, And like when you leave New York, you want to move to like a warmer environment.
Not Chicago, not Detroit.
No. Actually, Chicago is incredible. I love Chicago.
It's too cold, man.
I know. I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. Come on.
I'm already like complaining about the weather in New York still after 21 years. If I go to Chicago, I'll just like
die.
Yeah, exactly. Freeze to death.
Yeah.
Like, complaining about how cold it is.
I feel like if you're from Southern California and you go to New York, for me, so when we left New York, people were asking, well, did you ever consider something else other than California, Southern California, whatever? I'm like, no, not really, because like it sounds maybe it's kind of difficult to generalize and group all the East Coast together, but it's like we had our East Coast kind of experience. New York, we had the winters. We experienced plenty of winters. Experienced an urban place.
You got it.
International place.
Right. Nothing else is going to be much different than that.
Chicago to, let's go to somewhere different. Let's go to California.
Yeah. I honestly wish and now I just think it's too late, or maybe not, but I really wish I would have lived in Europe for a little while.
Yeah.
Just retire there.
I remember when I was coming through after grad school, I met like a couple architects in Sweden, and they took me to their office, and I was like, dude, I would love to work for an architecture firm in Stockholm. It'd be so rad. And I like sent them my resume, and I was like, oh, I really want to work there. And they're like, they're not going to fucking hire like a New Yorker to fly out to Sweden back in 2000. I don't know, maybe they would. I just didn't work out, And I was like,
long shot.
Yeah, right. I know. I was like, fuck. But yeah, I wish I had that experience of like living in Europe. It's weird to like not have an experience living abroad, you know?
Weird because
just because I think it's like we're not the center of the world at all, you know? Like we're like co-opting everything else in the world. Really, that's what America is.
Co-opting.
And like I just wish I would have had that experience. I don't know. Just to live in like, you know, anywhere, England, France, Sweden, Italy, you know. I'm jealous of my friends who have done that. I have a friend who moved to Germany and he's like brewing beer in Bavaria. I'm like, dude, you're fucking brewing beer in Bavaria. God damn it. That's awesome.
It's the name of a book.
Just tell him you're making
like super
kombucha.
jealous. I'm like, God, that sounds so rad. And you're getting like local hops from like
it's funny because if you are in Germany, it's like no standard business. It's nothing special.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
So just think about it that way.
I know. But just like the experience of like throwing yourself out there has always been like alluring to me. That's why I moved to New York in the first place, because I was like, where can I live in the United States that's like opposite of Southern California? New York City.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
Or I guess I could have gone to like Alabama or something.
Yeah, you could do that.
Which I just, yeah. Like, who is this fucking radical leftist?
I don't know how you'd probably blend better with all the black folks in New York City than you would in these parts of Alabama.
And I do. I do.
Well, you're Jewish, right? So that's like one foot in the door, sort of.
Yeah, it was weird because when I grew up in Huntington Beach, I was like the only Jew in my high school.
I was going to say
no, I wasn't, but there was like a few of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
You felt like the only one.
Yeah.
And it was like, it sucked actually because there's also a lot of neo-Nazis in Huntington Beach.
Really?
Yeah.
Huntington Beach and San Diego is pretty conservative.
I like never experienced like anti-Semitism in New York like I did in Southern California.
Whoa.
Like I remember like being out in downtown Huntington and like a dude coming up to me and being like, "What do you think of my tattoo, man?" And he's got a swastika tattoo on his arm. I'm like, "Fuck your tattoo, man." And like you get in a fight and like just like end up fighting these fucking Nazis all the time. You're like why am I living here, dude?
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
When I finally went to San Diego, I was like, oh God, thank God.
But San Diego has maybe
it does have it too there, like in North County. Yeah, there's like a neo-Nazi thing there.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Ocean. Fuck, what is the name of the city or the town or whatever? But near San Diego, there's some really hyper conservative.
No, it's
Isn't it
not
Oceans?
Carlsbad, but yeah, it's North County. It's like north.
You wouldn't expect it in California. Like why?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I tell people that, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
They got lost.
Yeah, they hear my stories. I'm like, dude, yeah, it was gnarly.
But I didn't realize Huntington Beach was that bad.
Cops too.
Really?
What?
Dude, I went to there was this substitute teacher at my high school, and I went to her house once because I knew her sons, and they had a swastika flag hanging up above their couch. And I remember walking in their living room going like,
All right.
whoa, dude.
Probably.
This is weird. This is super weird.
Probably shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna assume that your friends didn't know that you were Jewish.
No, they did, but we were like punkers, and so like from like the straight edge scene or something. So it was like a bubble, and there was like different punk scenes as well. There was like white power punk scenes.
Yeah.
There was like skateboard punk scenes. There were like straight edge who were like politically correct and like, you know, just So there's all this weird clicky.
And you were part of which one?
I was like the skateboarder, like straight edge punk scene kind of.
Right. And that overrules the Jewish and the Nazism.
Yeah.
It's in a child's eyes.
Well, yeah, because like especially the straight edge part was like super like political and like in a good way, you know.
Yeah. Right.
Like, they were like, you know, feminists before like, you know, anybody else besides like feminists were feminists.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right,
Like that
yeah.
kind of thing. Like against racism, like outwardly. You know what I mean? Like trying to like combat those bad things that were from Southern California. But like, I'll also say this: like some of the best people I've ever met in my life are from Huntington Beach. So like, if you're able to grow up from there and not be a douchebag, it's actually, it makes you an incredible person.
Right.
Like I think like I just tell the way I can explain some of the people I've like still love and I'm really good friends with is that we made it out without
Right.
being an asshole, you know? And like, it's harder when you come from a place like that. It's easy to grow up in New York when you're like, you know, inundated with like cool shit everywhere to like come out and be cool, you know? When you come from Orange County and like you get out of that and you're cool, it's like, it's actually something to be said about that, I think.
Yeah, I didn't make it out of Orange County.
You make it back to
cool.
Orange.
Yeah,
I made
you
it
did.
out.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't make it out as cool.
Yeah, yes, you did. You 100%
far
did, dude.
from
That's what I'm
fucking
saying.
true.
You 100% did.
There is something about people who I think grew up in urban areas like New York. They have a street sophistication about them, you know.
So did you ever? So you said you had crazy story about San Francisco in the 90s. Were you?
It's just I think it's just a way different city than it used to be. Like,
So did you used to hang out a lot?
I used to come
In
up here
NorCal?
a lot. Yeah, like we would come, and I had friends who lived up here, and I would just like go with bands and come up here, and it was just fucking rough, man. Like everybody, like drugs were everywhere. Like you'd be
Really?
walking around, and you'd be like, "What the fuck, dude?" You look down an alleyway, and you'd see people smoking crack, and they were friends of yours. You're like, "Is that Tony and Josh smoking crack? What the fuck?" And you're like, "This is fucked up, man. This is crazy." This shit was just crazy. You know what I mean? Like, and you get jumped in like the Mission. Does that happen anymore? I don't think so. I don't think it's like that anymore.
I don't think.
know?
I mean, there are patches of it for sure, but it's not. It's not palpable.
Yeah,
definitely. It's I mean, it's just natural with all cities, I suppose, but with like the tech-centric nature of the Bay Area, the changes have happened so rapidly that, and it's not even. It's kind of weird. Like the tech culture is you know, slowly taking over these different cities and places, but it doesn't even feel like a culture at times. It feels like a non-culture.
right.
You know, there's no. You don't feel like there's a soul to it. It's just fucking numbers and money.
Yeah,
And there's like some innovation, but a lot of it is just innovation for numbers and money.
Yeah.
It's not actually
it was
like
gritty
artistic.
back then. You know?
Say what?
It was gritty. Back
It was
then.
gritty back then,
Yeah.
and there was you just felt like the motivations of people weren't. The motivations had to do with some greater, you know, drive or meaning, like a social one or spiritual one or whatever, or like artistic one,
Right.
that was driving decisions and stuff. But
The artists were attracted to that
yeah,
grittiness. That's why like in New York, like the artistic neighborhoods were like when we were sort of like living there in the 90s and early 2000s, like obviously before then it was like Soho and Tribeca, but by the time I had moved there, that was long gone, and those neighborhoods were already pretty expensive. People were moving to the gritty neighborhoods like Lower East Side and Williamsburg, and they liked that.
yeah,
Like I could have gotten an apartment in like the West Village for a decent price, but I didn't want to live there. I wanted to live in the Lower East Side. I wanted to live in Williamsburg. And I had friends who moved to San Francisco in the 90s, and they wanted to live in the Mission.
Yeah.
That was where it was like creative and fun, and like freaks were there, you know? Like you could walk down the street and like look down an alley and see your friends smoking crack, and you're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? This is fucking so weird here. It's not like that anymore here. You know?
yeah.
I'm not saying, I don't wish to go back to that at all either, but like
Just a little bit.
like that like edginess to it was what was like alluring, you know?
Do you find though that Bushwick now?
It was always more edgy in San Francisco too than it was anywhere else in California. Back then, San Francisco was the place to go. LA, I think, has had like a renaissance since I moved out of California, and now it's like super cool and like creative there. And but it's also like a totally different thing,
right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But back in the day, like San Francisco was where you went because you knew that you were going to come here and just see some wild shit, you know, because the city allowed it. It was the culture. It was accepting.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, how it's changed. It's like the cost of living is so expensive here. You don't have that fucking freak show going on anymore. You know, that makes it awesome and like scares you a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know how those two things can ever really coexist.
Right.
You know.
Well, I mean, the thing is one took over the other, so.
Which is a scary thought, though, because if there's not, if it's, I mean, it's a story that has happened so many times, but it always plays out the same way, and I don't really know. So in the case of New York, like the kind of more art central neighborhood would be now like Bushwick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a sense that it is as, I don't know, robust or as crystallized or as strong as some of the other neighborhoods that used to be that way, like Soho or Lower East Side, for example, or Williamsburg?
I talk to people about it a lot, and people are like, New York's changed, man. It's just done. I'm like, no, it isn't, dude. It's because you don't know the right neighborhoods to check out. Like,
right.
Actually, the neighborhood I live in reminds me of the Lower East Side in the 90s. It's super gritty. You know, there's an intersection like a few blocks from my house where people were doing that drug that like weird, sniff it or something. I don't, what is it called? Like a lot of people at Yale like collapsed. Did you hear about this?
No.
Like, so there was one day when like they were buying this drug from like bodegas or something, and like 70 people collapsed on the corner of like Myrtle and Broadway, and they started calling it like Zombie Land.
I did hear about this.
That.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like a drug that wasn't very good quality or something?
I thought it was synthetic pot.
Maybe.
Oh, maybe.
No, something else.
No, I think it was something else, because the story I read about synthetic pot was like people like they didn't just fall over, they died.
Yeah,
a bunch of people died.
So like, do I think this is a good thing? Not at all. But like, what I'm saying is that there's like a grit to that area still that used to be like how the Lower East Side at least felt to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird, but I like that. I like that like shit's going on around, and like it's a lot of stuff going on. There's gentrification, which is sort of a bummer to watch, and I'm a part of it. But and when it's a bummer to watch, it's because your friend who lived across the street his entire life like can't afford his place and has to move out, you know, because the landlord jacked the rent up. And you see that happening, and you're like, that's because of me, kind of, you know, like I'm part of that in a way. Like, like I move onto the block and like I buy a house, and all of a sudden the property value of the other houses on the block is going up, and it's just like that's the process and how it works.
Yeah, and
it's a bummer to see a little bit. But it's still really interesting in that area. And so I think like Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, those neighborhoods are still just as interesting as the Lower East Side and Williamsburg were back in the 90s. And so it's still there. New York is still an amazing, incredible, inspiring place to be. And it's not all like, you know, what Williamsburg is like now, which is like nothing like it used to be. You know, I don't dislike it. It's just different. It's like what Soho was, you know, back then, basically.
It's tough. I mean, there are things to enjoy about Williamsburg or a lot of parts of Manhattan that are super cleaned up, but it's also it's exclusionary. That's the bottom line. That's the difficult thing, right? So even if it offers something in terms of aesthetics, vibe, culture, people, and certainly like quality of cuisine, let's say, or dining and things like that, it's because it's so exclusionary, and New York and its soul doesn't want to be that way. Well, it's kind of conflicted, New York, but a large part of its identity is not being exclusionary. That it's a weird thing to see, you know, really weird thing to see.
Yeah.
But Bushwick is still a good place.
I love it there. Yeah, totally.
A lot of really good street art.
Yeah, my neighborhood is like insane. It's actually a little bit annoying. So I get out.
Why is it annoying?
Well, because like there's like graffiti tours, and so you get out and you're like, oh, there's like 50 people on the corner, and they're like there for a graffiti tour, and you're like, dude, really?
I mean, I guess why not orchestrate or walk around all of it because it's there, but there's something a little like
and make people pay for it.
It's a little bit
business
totally
different from like the counterculture, direction. To now we're gonna have like a tour. Do they have like a flag and everything?
Yeah, I just think they do. It's totally that. And you're like,
I just imagine
you just know when you see them, you're like, it's just like, it's like when you see, like every once in a while, when you see like a family, like a white family walking down the street in my neighborhood that you'd never seen before, you just know they're renting an Airbnb, like those guys are Airbnbers for sure. 100%. They have backpacks on, and it's like a whole family with kids and everything. Like, dude, you're not from this neighborhood. That's for sure. Maybe they think that about me, though, actually. I have no idea.
Oh, you see, that guy's renting Airbnb too?
Yeah, exactly. But there is, like, specifically an Airbnb, like, several Airbnb houses on my block. And I'm just like, I don't know who those people are. Like, like, I just know right away. I'm like, yeah, they're staying at the Airbnb house. And there's a lot of them in Bed-Stuy, actually.
Oh, wow.
A lot of Airbnb houses.
So bizarre.
Yeah.
And one of the last few weeks we're in New York, we caught up actually out in Bushwick at your office, and it's kind of funny. I remember I got to see your office, really cool place, and then we were walking around to get like a drink or whatever, and we go up on this rooftop place. I don't know if you remember this. It was in Bushwick, and we see from a distance there's this taller building, like a kind of a red canopy, some kind of thing on top, and music. We're like, oh, yeah, that seems like it could be interesting. Let's go there. And we make our way up to the top, and it's super loud, like club music. And it wasn't even dark out yet. It was like 6 p.m. It was like
that's elsewhere.
And it was and it was like $20 for a drink. And we didn't order anything. We're both kind of like looking around and turn to each other, and you're like, do you want to go somewhere else? I'm like, yes. Yeah. And like, right back downstairs. Yeah. Like, hi, bouncer.
It seems like it could be a cool spot to hang, but it's like it's too much. 20 years too old, basically, for that.
I felt that way. I'm a lot younger than you.
But they have great shows there, and I've been there a few times to see like bands and stuff, and I enjoy it. But like going up to that roof is a weird like ravey kind of like millennial thing.
It just wasn't appropriate for the evening.
No, we were trying to like catch up and stuff. Yeah, you can't talk with like a rave going on
and all the girls
in the background.
Like, drinks.
Yeah.
All right, so we've actually gone through 90 minutes or more. I did want to get to a quick conversation about the AIA, because we had talked about actually years ago at this point about that.
Yeah. You want to try to do like a 10-minute thing?
10-15 minutes. We could do that, right?
Yeah. So I was I was asked to be on the executive committee of AIA Brooklyn, and so I do the continuing education forum, and I was always like what, why do I need to be a member of the AIA? Like I don't think I actually knew. I couldn't figure out what they did for you. Like, why was I going to spend like $600 a month to be an AIA member? Like, what are you going to do for me? And you don't really know until you go off on your own, maybe, and you're like, oh, I need a network, And for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this because then I can go chat with other architects about the business, and like, there's people I can reach out to that's not like Morris, because if I call Morris about an architecture question, he'll just be like, dude, stop fucking bothering me, dude. Like, I'll go to a show with you, but like, I can't call him and ask him like, hey, what do you do for this?
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't want to be bothered. He's got a business, and like I didn't have that resource, and the AIA kind of filled that in a little bit for me, but I still like, so then I got more and more involved. I started getting like sucked into it. Like they're like
a cult.
Yeah, it is like a little bit like.
Do you have a pin AIA somewhere?
They've given me like multiple ones. I never wear them, but yeah. And then I went to they have this thing called Grassroots, and it's like this like convention for people who volunteer with AIA, and so it's all like people from chapters around the country that go there.
It's like Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, and it was like really weird. Like I went to it in it was in San Diego. So they were like, "Hey, do you want to go to Grassroots in San Diego?" I'm like, "Yes, I'll totally go," because I love San Diego. So, but it was weird. It was like they had this slogan at their at some of their meetings. They were like, "Don't ask what the AIA can do for you. Ask what you can do for the AIA."
Okay.
Like pulling out that like John F. Kennedy thing, you know, like try to get people to like join the army and go to Vietnam. It's like,
yeah, but this is a different era.
Them.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit, man. I'm not speaking on behalf of them. So, but yeah, I was just like, no, like tell people why you should be a part of the AIA. Like make there a reason to join when you're in an office, you know? And I still don't think they're totally doing that yet. Like why would you join the AIA if you're working for a firm other than, you know, if you're studying for exams, it's good for that because they help you like do that and stuff. But what I realize is that it's like it's a professional organization, right? So like it's actually really it's a necessary thing. Who's going to advocate for the profession of architecture if you don't have the AIA?
Sure.
Right. So there's like a huge importance to it. And so that said, like it's super important. I still think that there needs to be like they have to like make a case for why like people should join the AIA out of college or something. Yeah. And I don't feel like there's a compelling case quite yet. And maybe that's why, like, you know, in Brooklyn, there's like 500 members, which is pretty good. But how many architects are there in Brooklyn? Probably like thousands and thousands of them. Right?
I mean, I've never felt compelled to join them. And,
right. That's kind of like what they're struggling against, I think. And like, but I don't think there's no reason why you should join the AIA really, other than that, like, you know, maybe if, you know, you start getting busy and you want to chat with people about something, then you'll have that.
Yeah. I can certainly understand that part. But I think there's different audiences, right? And one of them would be the fresh out of college type of person. What's the point, really? And studying for the exams, you know, I can figure that stuff out through, if I'm at a good office, they have a good support system for that. And especially if the AIA costs money and the profession pays so little and there's student debt for pretty much everyone that graduates, like I'm not looking to spend more money.
Right.
I've already spent a shit ton of money for this profession, for my education. To do this, I got to spend more money for being licensed. Now there's a monthly fee for this thing. What is the tangible thing, the tangible results that the AIA is going to offer me directly, right? And the networking aspect doesn't really work as a pitch to someone who's right out of college with student debt. Yeah,
totally. I have I would be a pretty terrible salesman if my job was to try to convince people to join the AIA. Like I'm actually the worst. I'm telling you not to, but like, not really. I think it's really important for me. It's like, it was just an opportunity to help try to steer the organization. Like you can complain about something and go to meetings, but if you don't actually get involved, then you can't influence and change it. Right. And like, I always thought like I would try to have people explain to me why I should join the AIA. And I just never, you know, until I went on my own, I just never did, because I was like, there's no reason for me to join. I don't need, what is it? What do they do for me? Do they provide me health insurance?
Yeah.
No. You know,
I feel like a lot of people we know who joined the AIA was like, maybe they went on their own and same thing, they were thinking that maybe they could help me, they could support me if I need to. A lot of them actually still don't know really what the AIA does for them, and they're paying the membership. Or people who launched their firm and they wanted the contract, so you get the contracts for free, right, if you join the AIA. Otherwise you pay $30 per contract or whatever it is. Right. But it does feel like, are they really supporting the profession, and how are they supporting it? Like,
they're absolutely supporting the profession 100% in ways that you don't even know about, because
that's the thing,
they're lobbying in like the state of New York, they're lobbying in DC specifically for the profession. And that is what the most important part of what the AIA does.
But I feel like that's unknown to the member of the AIA, to the people who pay the membership.
Right, exactly.
Because it's kind of like happening in the back of house. Yeah. It's not like what they're promoting necessarily.
Yeah. But I think what they need to do more is also advocate for the person, like in the profession, right? Like why is it that like the profession of architecture, where we study and it's so rigorous, and why is it that we're so underpaid?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like why do doctors make so much more than architects? Well, I'm not saying that being a doctor is like being an architect is like, in terms of like the importance to society, is like, you know, you could make that argument. You could say it is just as important as being a doctor. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying when you get out of medical school, you can easily make over $200,000 after a couple of years of practicing medicine. You may never make that much money as an architect, even when you go open up your own business, you know? And so like they should be advocating for stuff like that. However, they don't let you talk about fees. You explicitly can't do that at the AIA. You're not allowed to like talk about fees and like what you bill for things.
Well, then where are you supposed to talk about it?
I know they should let. I don't know why they do that. I'm going to find out, but you know, I'm like influencing it as much as I can in certain ways. Like with continuing education, it's to me like a tool to like just try to push like sustainable design. And like even if you could do like really artistic creative work, but everything has to be like with an underlayment of sustainability, because like combating climate change is like a weapon of an architect to like,
sure,
you know, like buildings are like responsible for like such a huge degree of the carbon that's being emitted into the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's some ridiculous high
we're on the
number.
front lines of the climate the climate crisis and combating that. And so use it to like to influence the profession that way, and to like educate people about passive house. And so I've been doing like, I started this series like designed to combat climate change, and like the lectures are specifically like geared towards that, and like give architects who are members of the AIA who are practicing the ability to like, you know, become more sustainable architects as well. You know, also like you could, like one of the things I'm kind of proud about, I'm not totally like responsible for it, but I was advocating for is like having a women in architecture committee and promoting women in architecture, and like that is happening now, like and I think that's awesome. Like so the AIA has the ability to affect the profession that way. So if there's things you don't like about it, go there and you can help change it with them. That's what the point of the organization is, really. And I think it's totally failing on other ways as well. Like we were just talking about, like how do you convince people to even give a shit about joining? But once you start, like, once you're running a business, then you're like invested in a different way than you are when you're at an architecture office, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden, like the way politics responds to the profession is important to you, you know? Yeah. And like, how do you have to have a professional organization to help navigate that.
Well, you're much closer to, and you're much more exposed to other parts of society outside of your office. I think when you're an employee, you know, the buffer is that you work for someone else and you don't think about getting clients. You don't think about well, you should, but you know, you might not necessarily think about the economy. You might not think about these large scale. Your sense of
responsibility is different, right?
Yeah, your sense of responsibility is very micro. It's within something else, and it's like the office is the outer shell that has to communicate and think about the broader issues of the profession. When you're working, depending on your job, of course, but if you're working as I don't know, more on the technical side, you do building details all day, you don't have to think about that as long as your paycheck is coming through the door. Right.
I wish the AIA was more like a union almost. Like,
yeah, seriously.
You know what I mean? Like it would be so great if like you join the AIA and there are benefits like you join a union, like you get a pension or something, or like, you know, like, can it be that way? Maybe it can. I don't know.
I mean, we interviewed a guest who was in the movie industry, right, in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And they have unions in the movie industry, which is like unbelievable to think about, right? That you would never guess.
Right.
But we have architects and people in the construction who are working in the field who are sometimes part of unions, but architects aren't.
Right.
Or they don't even have the option to be if they wanted to, which is weird.
Yeah. And if it was more like that, we wouldn't be having this conversation about why you joined the AIA. You join the AIA because you get a pension, you get health insurance. Yeah. You know, you get security that when you're between jobs, you have, you know, something that like a social safety net that the unions provide.
Is there a sense that also that the people in the leadership of the AIA are trustworthy and that they're going to do a good job of what they're tasked with doing? Because I think there is an element of distrust that is much more common amongst especially the younger generation now with any large organization.
I
don't get that at all. Like I don't understand why there's distrust. Although I have to say that I did as well, because I was like, dude, $600 a year. What are you giving me? Nothing.
Yeah.
So that's like the basis of where that comes from. But in reality, I don't see anything. In fact, I see the exact opposite. I see people who are actually passionate about the profession doing everything they possibly can for nothing, not getting paid for it, to try to make it better for everybody. And I think that's awesome, you know? So no, there's nothing like that in Brooklyn. They're passionate people who love the profession, working for fucking free. You know, I don't get paid for all these lecture series I put together so that people can get their CEU credits and keep their licenses. I just volunteer because I care about it, you know? And I thought it was also just a good opportunity. It's also like crazy. Like, why am I doing this? I don't have time for it. I have 2 kids and like I have like an office. Like, I'm like, why? Where do I fit the time in? And I go to these executive meetings and I'm like, oh man, how am I gonna find the time to do this? So I can't do it forever, you know. Yeah. But I'll do my duty for a few years and then probably not, because I'll just be too busy. Hopefully to not. I'll just bow out and somebody else will hopefully take it over and be even more passionate about it, you know?
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
Where is myself 10 years from now? I mean, like I said, I'd love to have an office in California. I like to be doing projects around the world more, and have like an office of like 20 people. I don't think I'd want to ever be more than that, really. I like a smaller size firm just to be more nimble and be able to like, just to be able to know what's going on everything a little bit more and be involved. And I feel like the bigger the office gets, the more stretched you are and the less involved you're going to be in stuff. And I like being involved in all the details. I like sitting down and doing a set of drawings. There's something about like being like a small office where you just get to do everything that's kind of fun. Yeah. You know, and it keeps you like from getting bored of doing the same thing all the time. Like if you're, I imagine like an office of like 200 people, you're mostly chatting with clients all the time, which is awesome. But then you never get to sit down and do CAD. You probably never do.
I don't think so.
You never draw, you know, maybe you sketch some ideas and stuff, but I enjoy that part of it too still.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we covered a bunch of different stuff, and I'm glad we got to cover a little bit about the AIA at the very end.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the Midnight Charette. We hope you enjoyed, and shout out to our guest, Marshall. Back when times were simpler and less stressful. What else is going on? We are on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. If you like what we're doing, then support the show by leaving an iTunes review. We've had a few come out recently, and we appreciate it. We see all the support that you guys are showing and leaving us through reviews, also through shoutouts on social media and things like this. You can find us on pretty much any of these social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc. Reach out to us through those or through our hotline, which is 213-222-6950. You can call that message and we'll play the recording on the show and have a discussion around your topic. Or you can text it as well if you don't want to leave a voicemail. Other than that, we will keep the show going. Some great things happening. Everyone stay safe, stay sane, be well, and we will talk soon. Bye.